Hello, everyone. As always, welcome to Office Hours. It's great to be here trying to help you kind of understand how technology and video and all the rest of this stuff works. We gather every day right here to discuss modern web-based production. It's where you can submit your questions about media creation and distribution. Whatever question you have, toss them into the queue. There's really kind of two ways to do that. If you want to get into the big, more complex but more powerful process, you join the Mukana system. You go to the officehours.global website and follow the breadcrumbs there. And that allows you not only to enjoy the questions that are coming up and see kind of what's happening, but also vote for those questions. And what you vote for as a group is what we get to quickest and talk about for the longest. So if you get into that Mukana system in the back end, I highly suggest you do it. It's a lot of fun. You'll also be able to chat live with fellow Office Hours watchers and talk about topics, and that's something we encourage you to do. If you don't want to do that, if you really want to make things simpler, you can just use the QR code that's popping up on the screen right now. Shoot that with a device that handles QR codes, and it'll take you into the system. Put your questions in there. Other people then will be able to vote them up or down, and the same process works. So that's kind of how Office Hours works every day. That takes care of our pre-show announcements. It's time to dive in. Alexander, what do our viewers and listeners have on their minds for today?
First one this morning is from Craig Kadoki in Toronto, Canada. On yesterday's show, we saw the StreamDeck Studio. Reading their website, it says that it is powered by Bitfocus software, as this is running Companion on a Pi or similar small system-on-a-chip built-in Companion Pi. Does that influence our thoughts?
Guy Cochran's going to start us off. Guy, good morning, and what do you think?
Hey, good morning, Bill. This is an exciting announcement. It's not just the Bitfocus Companion software. There's some new software that's called Buttons, so it's broadcast control for everyone made simple. Now, the device itself is pretty expensive when you look into it, but this new, for those of you that are familiar with Companion, this is the new Buttons interface, and so far all I've done is just connect an AJ Key Pro. There's something new called Position, where if you have, let's say this is a 32-button StreamDeck, the new device that is released will be a panel. It's a 2U with 32 buttons going across. And I've just added a simple play button. It's just a matter of if you want to add a button, you just right click and you can say create a button. And in here you can go ahead and say like step 1 on the down press, do this action. Like right now I've got play, stop, here's record. So I'll add a record button and you can change that name around. The crazy thing about this is right now it's in beta. So you'll see something called NMOS. And this is going to be another way of controlling devices that are more, it's just a different protocol. So instead of just TCP/IP and ARTNet and all these other protocols, NMOS is something that they announced that they would do with a partnership with Blackmagic. So I'm excited to see what the whole ecosystem is unveiled tomorrow, and we'll see more from Bitfocus and from Elgato and see what this is all about. But so far, it's exciting.
Alexander.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I missed that part of the announcement with the product. I'm still skeptical about the product. I have to really try it. My concern is that the buttons are going to feel exactly like the current Stream Decks, which are fine, but I wouldn't call them pro level. Now, for $899, some people have pointed out on the panel that in comparison to similar products. Obviously, they've copied. I forget the name of the company. They've copied the design of that product. In comparison to the other existing ones on the market, it is significantly cheaper. So that may mean that it's valuable to a lot of people. I just hope that the buttons are a little bit better. It's really interesting that they've decided to integrate Bitfocus Companion. That's a clear acknowledgement of how successful that product has been and how incredibly powerful it is. So it's good to see. I'm glad they got it.
Guy, you wanted to come back in for a second?
Yeah, it sounds like NMOS is what they're using for 2110 routing. And so when we talk about a regular Stream Deck costing like a 32 is like $300 and this thing costing $899, when you look at some of the other panels, like the one that Alexander was just referring to, I believe that one's way more than that. And I think, and this is Craig's question, is does it actually have a Pi or something built into it? And that'll be known here in the next few hours as they unload these press releases. some of this stuff, because we're in these companion user groups, we found the link to the beta stuff, and we're already in there digging and digging. That's why you hadn't seen that yet, Alexander, because it hasn't been released. So some of us just on the back channels are like, "Hey, have you seen this?" And it's like, go take a look and play. So I'm just playing, seeing what's new out there.
Which is giving you some idea of the power of the office hours community. There's the live stuff that we all do, but behind the scenes all day long, people are chatting and talking and giving each other tips about where to find information. It's really an interesting thing. Courtney, you had a comment here.
Well, I was just going to say, I haven't looked at the back of this unit to see if it has an HDMI out or a keyboard or a USB out on it. That would be a tip-off that there is a small single-board computer built into it to host Bitfocus companion. So whether or not that's built in or whether it's just designed like all the other StreamDeck peripherals to interface to something that's hosting Bitfocus, I'm not sure. Guy, do you know what's on it?
On the back, it is just Ethernet, so it can be PoE powered, and then it's just USB. So when I plugged into buttons, I just used my regular, USB companion software, and it detected it on the network, although it is having some problems refreshing. I did want to bring up something here that I had seen on a recent production where they were using one of these smart controls from Blackmagic that looks. Let me see if I can make this a little bigger. Basically, it's a control a button, and on this show they had the SDI output of the camera, so that you had a clean feed with one button push, and then you had the regular interface with aperture, battery life, all that stuff. So a dirty feed on the second button. So somebody in engineering could just push one of these buttons. So I see that as a use case for this in a show where you have 8 cameras, and not only do you get to see the output, but you can go in and say, "Hey, is that ISO set at native ISO 800, or is that set at 1600?" And you can visually see that just with a button press. And anybody, because at this last show they had 4 of these things across the board, so I could see these Stream Decks, these new panels being in front of a bunch of monitors where people can just instantly go in and see. But the multi-view, the camera 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, camera 8's dirty display, so there's going to be some power here, and for the right user, it's going to make sense. But for the wrong user, of course, they're just going to buy a regular, little tiny Stream Deck like this one.
Yeah, and in the chat, Mickey McAchore said US $899 is relatively affordable compared to professional button panels. So for those people who don't work in broadcast or in the higher end facilities, that is not a scary price for somebody who's in a multi-million-dollar facility trying to get the stuff done right every day. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael says CSNY, that's Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, released a live album from a 1969 show at the Fillmore East, claiming it was mixed and mastered just like in 1969. Given the difficulty of finding functioning equipment from that era and people who can work with it, how feasible is that claim?
Jesse, start us off. What do you think?
Totally feasible, but first, let's look at the claim. So this is on rollingstone.com, and here's kind of the quote that we're referring to. It's based on analog tapes. So everything they recorded was analog tapes at the time. Without digital echo, not sure what he means by that. It's all analog. It's not the digital piece of machine. There's not a piece of digital machinery working on the record, and the vinyl comes out just like it would have in 1969. It's difficult to find this gear, but it's not impossible. Jack White, for example, produces records in a full analog workflow. Not exclusively, but he does have the full analog from recording to mixing to, and mastering to pressing vinyl. So the gear exists, and there is something to be said about this older gear in that it is possible to repair. So we've kind of in the 90s to early 2010s, we entered the era where you won't be able to repair it. Like if you don't have working pieces, you can't repair the thing anymore. But the further back in time you go, the easier it becomes to solder your own or build your own little bit that needs to fill in the gap of whatever's broken. So difficult, but not impossible. And the gear is out there, and it is functioning in full pipeline right now.
Alexander.
Yeah, 100%. There's actually quite a few recording studio. I mean, a lot of recording studios have analog gear. So some of it more vintage than others, and of course they have to be maintained. But I just want to point you to two big names. Capitol Records in the United States has like millions of dollars in vintage gear that's 60, 70 years old, and it's all maintained. And of course, the very famous Abbey Roads as well. So if you wanted to mix something on a console that the Beatles used back in the 60s, you could go there and do it. So absolutely, there are places where you can do this.
Courtney.
Having worked on a number of concert films during that period of time, there was a company here in Hollywood called Wally Hyder Recording, which did a lot of this stuff. And they had trucks, they had mobile trucks that had Studer 8 tracks in them and 4 tracks in them. And they had 4-track recorders in a mobile truck in 1969. They did a lot of stuff in San Francisco at the Fillmore West. So it was probably Hyder's truck. So there are a number of studios here in town that still maintain some Studer 8 tracks. So it's possible, obviously, since the masters were recorded probably on those 8-track Studer recorders, they're going to have to find one to play it back on to master it and mix it. And the Hyder trucks had 4-track mixdown, or 12-position 4-track console built into it that was Bill Putnam designed. So that stuff is probably still around. Somebody's probably still maintaining it. Here's you can see what the mix console looked like there. And since we're into an era of a revival of vinyl, there's probably vinyl cutters that are still available that were the same ones used in 1969 to master that record onto vinyl. So, yeah, that equipment is still around, and a few people are still maintaining it. They're going to have to bake those tapes, though, to make sure that they don't dissolve when they play them back.
Jesse Kester, you wanted to come back in on this?
Yeah, and I would argue that snares have never sounded as good digital as they have analog, technically.
I will also say one challenge is that it's harder and harder to find tubes. Back in the 60s, a lot of the amplifiers and signal processing changes used vacuum tubes. They were really easy to get when I was a youngster. They are harder and harder, and it all went offshore. In fact, particularly to Russia, the only place you could get replacement tubes for a lot of the stuff that I grew up with was Russia at one point. Now I would imagine that's all the more difficult. So there are people who say there is nothing like the sound of that old equipment. There's a lot of emulation work trying to figure out how to map that onto digital circuitry and get you the same profile. But I think for the purists who really want exactly the sound from 1969, I hope that they are doing it quickly, because there's going to come a point where I don't know if somebody's going to take up the mantle of rebuilding those vacuum tubes that were pretty specific from that era to replace them and get the equipment still working. Fingers crossed. Great question. Thanks. Let's go to the next question.
From the QR code, Marielle, Jusha, Miera, and Wablo is asking, what's the quickest, easiest way to get a mic on a podium into Dante to a mixer as simple as possible? Thanks.
Nigel's going to start us out. Nigel Dessau.
Well, thank you. I guess it depends what type of mic it is, but the really easiest way would be a very long cable, depending on how far your mixer is away from your mic. The reality here is this: you need to know what type of mic it is. Does it require phantom power? How far is it from the mixer? The simplest way, as I say, is just lay a long cable. If you could get it into a stage box. That would probably be a good way to get it into Dante. If you can get it into a PC, maybe you can use DVS or you can use one of these Avios. I know some of the Avios actually allow a male and female XLR, but I don't know whether they provide phantom power. So we probably need to know a bit more about the scenario and what the challenge is to be more accurate.
Guy Cochran.
Yeah, there's a couple boxes from RDL. One of them, if you look at the top of a lectern, a lot of them are going to look like this, where they have just this plate, and then on the backside of that plate, it will kick back out to XLR. So from there's this $890 device that'll give you phantom. So RDL is one of the few places that make this kind of box that allows you to have phantom, turn that on remotely, and go ahead and kick it to RJ45 so you can, send it down the wire via Dante.
Alexander?
Yeah, RDL has box like that, and Studio Technologies, of course. My question here is that I've never seen, and Guy already alluded to this, but I've never seen a podium that didn't already have analog wiring there. So the question, I'm just trying to replay this scenario in my head. If you have a console that is Dante equipped, and you have a podium with a mic with analog wire already there running to the console, and the console has Dante, why do you need a mic preamp with Dante there to run network cable? That doesn't make sense to me. Unless for some reason you're going to a space where you can't use the console as just shared space, and maybe you got to bring your own. Then that makes sense. Then getting your own mic preamp and just, like I said, RDL or Studio Technologies, and just put it right there underneath the podium with a short cable, and then run your network cable to your Dante equipped mixer.
Thank you for the question. Let's go to the next question.
Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand asks, given I have a lot of MIDI-equipped devices, amps, synths, foot switches, etc., is there a recommended way to connect them via a hub instead of the usual daisy chaining of MIDI devices? What would you recommend?
Alexander, you had raised your hand for this as well.
Yeah,
so
there's a couple of devices here. I'm going to point you to two companies, iConnectivity and Motu. So this is the Motu Express XT, I think it's called. So it's got USB basically, but it has 8 in and 8 out MIDI ports. So that's one option. Motu makes pretty rock solid stuff. And of course, iConnectivity as well. Their products have become very popular in the playback world because of redundancy. They have multiple USB host options. So, you can have like multiple laptops running in case one rig goes down, it can have failover that goes to the next one. And this one's got a lot of MIDI in and out on it as well. So I would look at iConnectivity. This is the, do I have the interface name? This is the Mayo XL and then the Motu Express XT. Those are the two that I would look at there.
Courtney.
Very good suggestions, Alexander. Another possible way, it depends on how complex your setup's going to be. And if you just need one primary workstation and a lot of things you're feeding to synths and things, rack mount synths. This thru box from Kenton is a cheap way to go. So it's 1 in and 8 throughs, I think. If you want to get much more complex, you can get something that's kind of like a router, like you would have for a video router. And this is from MRCC's MIDI router, and it's about 439. And you've got multiple MIDI ins, MIDI outs, and some USB connections there, and you can route MIDI ins to MIDI outs over this device. So it's a little more complex and a little more comprehensive than just one-to-many or many-to-one or throughput, in, out, and through MIDI route.
Peter, thank you for the question. Next question.
From Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas, OpenAI is set to launch its new AI model, Strawberry, within 2 weeks. This marks a leap in AI's capacity to handle complex information processing and improve decision-making. What does it mean? I'm sorry, Strawberry.
The eternal question. What does it mean? Nigel, help us understand.
I suspect we won't know the answer to that until we play with it, but it appears to be a separate product coming rather than in the direct ChatGPT line. And from what I was able to read about it, includes reasoning. So it will take some time to respond to your question. So rather than speedy answers, which it gets from dragging the internet and combining it all, it's going to apply reasoning models. Now, which reasoning model it applies may be another question. I wonder whether you could, I would like assertive reasoning. I would like deductive reasoning. I would like, all sorts of other ones. Personally, I like the reasoning they use in Monty Python's Life of Brian about what the Romans ever did for us, but I'm guessing that isn't an option. But it's really going to be down to this idea that you can have a reasoned-based conversation and it thinks it through logically. What that really means, I guess we wait to see.
Why do I want a T-shirt suddenly that says "Me now with reasoning"? Jesse Kester.
Pretty much everything we've seen from AI in the grand public space so far has been its delightful little parlor tricks, like make an image in the style of Frank Frazetta, or summarize Star Wars in the style of Edgar Allan Poe, or something like that. This is kind of when we get to the real meat of the beast. Can it understand broader concepts? Can it collate ideas that are abstract and return some kind of information that is actually useful to people? Can it see things that we have never seen before because our perception is limited? Like, we can't see infrared, we can't see ultraviolet, but those things exist. What else exists, and what can be seen by these algorithms that we can't see? So it's very exciting. We'll see how it lives up. It isn't launched yet, so it's promises right now.
Next question.
Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand asks, I've been with Office Hours since the start. We've seen a lot of software and hardware evolve over that time. Given that, what challenges would one have to overcome to create a pay-per-view video event? Thoughts?
Ooh, big topic. Jesse Kester, start us off.
The challenge at this point is intellectual. The equipment is affordable. The platforms are there for you to use. You can jump on Vimeo and do a pay-per-view event today if you wanted to. It's filling that space with information that people would pay to view. That is the challenge that we're left with.
Guy Cochran. Oops, you're muted, Guy.
Yeah, I would take a look at Vimeo's offering, but the last time that I had a client go down these steps, it was very challenging to work with Vimeo to get to the big numbers. So the easier way is to use something not like Vimeo, but to go ahead and use Zoom. If you could handle getting the 1080p account on your own, that makes it easier. But Audio is the other thing that I've seen people use, and on a monthly, you can get into the 7-day trial. You get 720p meetings and $19.97. Then from there, you can also look at configuring Zoom Webinar with PayPal. So that this way, it just makes it super easy, because it's not just getting this thing live streaming. The technical part's easy. It's how do you get the money actually into your bank account? So when you start getting thousands of dollars cruising through an account, you've got to have a way of doing it smoothly. And so I would either hire somebody who's done this before, or I would use Zoom, because Zoom with PayPal integration makes it super easy. But the Vimeo side, if you get 1,000 people at a couple $100, you're talking big money, and the bank's not just going to release that money for a one-off very simply. So I would hire somebody who's done this before. But Audio is neat because what it does is it locks it down. So like in the Tony Robbins events, people can't share that login with a bunch of people, because when they hit that registration page, it just sends them down this black hole where they couldn't share their $800 ticket with 5 friends. So that's one of your things to look at too, is just how far do you want to lock this down, and how do you want to get paid?
This is personal. I'm just kind of going off on a little tangent here, but managing complexity, and these events are complex and getting more and more complex, it seems to me, as we go. And one of the most fascinating things of having been on these panels with Office Hours for the last 4+ years is watching the people who have come on to the panel really dive into understanding the complexity that's behind the scenes of things. It's pretty easy to watch a big event and go, oh, well, that's kind of like my Zoom thing, and I know how it works, and so it must not be that difficult to do. Having met so many people now through this show, and having had a chance to talk to people who are in the back end at some of the very, very specific details, and having watched my fellow panelists learn this stuff, it's really been a privilege to see how adaptable the human being is. I've also come away understanding that no one person can, I think, understand and manage all of it at an extremely high level, because it's just too complex. And I used to be kind of an advocate of the fact that since the tools are getting easier, now I can make the whole video myself. I can make the whole record myself. I can do all these things myself. And as I've seen behind the curtain a little bit because of the time I've spent here at Office Hours, I realize how silly I was being, because there's so much complexity in the back end. There is so much technology in the back end. There is so much that seems simple when you use it, but once you pull away the corner of the veil over it, you realize how incredibly complex and difficult it is to ride herd over everything so it works reliably, consistently every time. One of the reasons I think that broadcasting stuff like radio and television is lasting so long is that it took decades for that stuff to become reliably part of the commerce stream. And even in 4 years, as much change as I've seen in internet broadcasting, I can still see that there's still ways for it to go. It's not equivalent. It is bigger in some ways and smaller in some ways, but it's just different. And boy, watching the talented people that I'm privileged to know all around me handle this complexity and master it and become really good at what they're doing has just been fabulous for me to see. So end of my little personal rant, but I'm surprised, shocked, and amazed at all of you, both on the panels here and in the back end and in the group of the people who watch this show. I know you are all coming along at this same incredible pace, and I just think you ought to pat yourself on the back for not running away from this stuff, but diving into it, making it part of your lives and getting ahead of this curve. Anyway, end of ranting stuff. Let's go to the next question.
Robert White from Jacksonville, Florida, from the QR code is asking, if I plug a mono cable into a stereo headphone jack, what happens? Do I receive a combination of the left and right channels through the mono cable?
Jason, start us out.
No, you'll only get sound from one channel, either left or right, usually the left, depending upon how the contact is made. So this is a TRS, which is tip, ring, and then sleeve. The tip is left, the ring is right, and then the sleeve is ground. So depending upon how the mono cable contacts with the port, you will either get left or right, and you can't kind of jimmy it in halfway. What you're thinking of is, I think, the other way around, where you would take a stereo cable and put it into a mono jack and try to get outputs out of both, and that's not a good idea, but it could work as long as you don't care about your level.
Alexander Knight.
Yep, Jason's exactly right there. Typically, you'll only get the left channel because that's usually the tip. That's the first thing it typically makes contact with. The only other way around that is if whatever the device is that you're plugging into, if there's a way in software to internally sum to mono, then you'd be okay. But you don't want to stick a mono cable into the headphone jack.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, you can make your own. You will only hear the left, but the problem is the right channel is going to be shunted to ground. So if you plug that mono, tip sleeve, only plug into a tip ring sleeve jack, it's going to tie that the ring to ground, which means that that your amplifier is going to be driving a dead short on the right channel. So that is not a good idea. You could put it in part way if you could get it to stay in exactly the right place, but since there's not a little detent on the ring, that's going to be really hard to hear the right channel. But if let's say you've got a single ear monitor that you want to be able to hear both channels in, you could go in and rewire it with a stereo plug on the end of it, and then just combine the tip and the ring together in the plug to your one ear, to your earphone lead, and then the shield to the shield. And that way you could hear both channels. And it would probably be best to put like a 4-ohm resistor to each one of those, to the tip and the ring, to your one channel, so that you're not directly connecting those two together, so that they interfere with each other. So anything else down the line that you plug in will then be hearing that combined signal over either the tip or the ring. So be aware of that you're going to be shorting those two outputs together.
Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas asks, comment, RepliQ creates personalized videos. Upload your source video or record it directly on the platform. You can display websites, social media profiles, ChatGPT prompts, or job listings, etc.
Jesse, what do you think? Have you looked at this?
Is anyone else getting this earthquake right now?
Yes, I am definitely getting the earthquake right now.
Oh, were you guys actually involved in an active
is shaking?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
It was like a good 15, 20 seconds of rumbling.
Shaking.
I didn't feel it here in San Diego, so it's localized to the LA area, one of those fault lines. But
not a big one, but it was a fun one.
Okay.
RepliQ, one of the reasons that I'm able to stay so optimistic about the future is because I ignore every single ad that comes up promising to generate thousands of leads for my business. Let's go ahead and take a look at RepliQ, and then we can go ahead and ignore them almost immediately. It's standard AI gobbledygook where the price structure means nothing. Price structure means nothing. Moving down, what they do is you build a video with your sales pitch, and then it seems to add in the name of the client that you're trying to reach out to the video at some level. Leads mean nothing. Leads mean nothing. Quality leads are what you want, and you can generate thousands of leads, but you're just kind of wasting your time at that point because you have to pick through them and get the ones that are good. So any ad that starts with, do you want to generate thousands of leads, just chuck it in the trash. It's a charlatan.
Jason Baish.
Yeah. First rule of business is that unless we're talking about money, more is not better. It's just more.
There you go. Next question.
Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand asks, I'm getting bombarded with ads from Output Arcade. Anyone else? I noticed that searching YT videos for them, that their videos are old, up to 6 years old. Any reason I should try them?
Whoa, 6 years in internet years. That's worse than dog years. Jesse Kester, what do you think?
You should try them if you think they sound good. The ads have been coming up on my feed a lot. I'm assuming the company is trying to hit some sort of quota in sales before the end of the year, so they're just kind of pumping those ads out. Some of the sounds are cool. I guess none of them are, stop what you're doing and record a song with them right now type sounds. But if they sound cool to you and you want to experiment, go ahead.
Guy Cochran?
Yeah, it's cooking your browser basically on things that you've searched for. There's these little cookies that get printed in. This is why it's nice to use something like Brave browser where they don't track you, or you could say do not track, because basically somebody has a budget, you entered in a search, they're now going to follow you around the internet, and you probably see it like on CNN. I would get like a bunch of B&H type ads on the right side, and I was just looking at that mixer, and that's just the way it works is once you search for something, you're going to get followed around. So if you're going to search for something like a car especially, go use Brave and go incognito. Otherwise, your feeds are going to get pummeled with all this kind of stuff.
And we're at the bottom of the hour, so the standard disclaimer here, your questions do drive this show. We appreciate it when you put them in, and it is equally important as you see the questions, particularly if you're in the back end of the Mukana system, do add your votes to the question of what we get to next and spend the most time with. Your votes do count, particularly a lot of days we get more questions than we can possibly handle in depth, so some get pushed back to the original submitter for resubmission in a second time, and the way that we curate which ones we get to are your votes. So your votes are always important. Next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael. DMB Audiotechnik has introduced SustainSymphony, which tracks sustainability metrics on a per-event basis. Would tools like this help justify virtual events from an environmental perspective?
Courtney, what do you think?
Well, sure, your environmental footprint is going to be a lot lower with a virtual event. Then you only have to worry about the power consumption that your virtual event is going to take up, and that is spread across multiple power sources, etc. This software is designed for event producers. It's more of a marketing tool, I think, than anything else to comply and track your carbon footprint. So it helps you comply with local regulations and if you're sending a venue into a public place, find out what the neighbors are upset about, that kind of stuff, so that you comply with all the city and county regulations, and then you can track your carbon footprint and put out rules and restrictions on your vendors, let's say, to have only recyclable cups and straws and containers, and how you're going to clean up after your event to make sure that you leave the place exactly like you left it. This it kind of protects you a little bit against a lawsuit, maybe. I'm not sure about that. I don't know what kind of guarantees they have with this, but they do a lot of the heavy lifting as far as collecting rules and regulations for event locations so that you can be in compliance. And I think they will when you give them metrics on what your event is, how much power it's going to consume, they can make suggestions on greener ways to provide that power with maybe generators that burn French fry oil or something.
The smell of fast food for your power consumption. Jesse, what are your thoughts?
It's nice and it makes people feel good. It's like those water fountains with the water bottle and it says you've saved 10,000 bottles by filling up your refillable drink bottle instead of getting a new bottle of water. But it is complete gibberish because it's not like people were going to buy 10,000 bottles of water if that water fountain wasn't there to refill their reusable container. You can't measure what you didn't use. You can't prove a negative.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. One of my early gigs as a young radio reporter back in my not misspent youth, but I covered the rate increase hearings for local utilities in Phoenix, where I live there, so a pretty big city. And what was interesting to me was the number of interveners that came in to talk about that, and one of them was the U.S. Army. And what they were trying to do was track the costs of their electric use. They were also training their young lawyers into how to go into public regulatory circumstances and things like that. But I do remember sitting through a large day where they were talking about all the infrastructure and how the mathematicians tried to figure out, okay, what is the real cost of delivering a kilowatt hour of power to you? And it's not just building the generator plants. It is a whole bunch of other things that you don't really think about. It is a complex model, a complex question. It's always going to be reduced. Things like judging sustainability, it's a matter of what you put into the algorithm, into the model, and what you leave out. And the more you know about the subject, I think the closer you can get, but it's always going to be an estimation. And I think Jesse just brought up, are those 10,000 plastic bottles, would they ever have been bought? We know that people using plastic bottles have a different impact than people using tap water. But tap water also has infrastructure costs behind it. And I'm not sure anybody's ever, even with all the artificial intelligence in the world, going to get serious reproducible answers to this. There's just a lot of estimating in life, and you just have to put up with the estimates. Jason, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, and along those lines, there's good and bad science. And one of my favorite courses in college was psychological statistics. And fun fact about the whole plastic bottle thing, reduce, reuse, recycle was invented by the plastic and container industry. So just think about that.
Yeah, it's very hard to figure out exactly what the right thing to do is. Follow your heart, follow your head. Try to do as much research as you can. But if you're like me, you get to the point where you go, I'm never going to understand this enough to be absolutely sure all my decisions are the right ones. And so you just have to take up a little slop in life. Next question.
Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York is asking, Guy, do you still have your Zoom test meeting going?
Guy Cochran, how's it going?
Yeah, just to back up a little bit to show what this was all about. It was created because there was 8 Dell computers at 090 that had these talking heads, and basically we still have it going now with these synthetic heads. You can go into this meeting 24/7 right now. There's somebody in there with NDI. So basically you could join this meeting and you can do Zoom ISO, you can do vMix, you can do Wirecast. It allows you to join the meeting. It's a 1080p meeting running 24/7, and you can join and you can isolate, grab onto any of those speakers, and you can build your 2-ups, 3-ups, 4-ups, 8-ups, whatever you want to build. So that's what it's there for. It's actually Oliver from Mimo Live. He's the guy who's footing the bill for all this. It's running here locally in my little cloud here that I have. But yeah, it's running, and feel free to jump into it. I'll put a link in the chat.
Another part of the benefits of being a part of this community, you find tools like that. And thank you, Oliver Breitenbach and Guy, for managing these tools so that people can use them. Courtney, you had some thoughts.
Yeah, I had a question. Do you have those speakers tied into individual AI chatbots so that they have little arguments between each other or go back and forth? That's what I want to know.
It was scripted and it resets every 12 minutes. So they go through this. So we use ChatGPT to create these synthetic talking heads, and they just have this conversation, and then it resets every 12 minutes. And so it's the same conversation running all day. They don't actually go on and just make stuff up.
It'd be really interesting to tie them into different chatbots and then give them a topic every 10 minutes and let them discuss.
I'm just going to make them say what Courtney says every morning. I'm just going to take all your lines and I'm going to feed it in there. And now it'll be a new meeting with Courtney's lines.
I want to see that.
Courtney said .org.
Sora has popped up over here with this comment. ChatGPT thinks it's stupid. Anyway, let's go to the next question.
John Volts in Salings Grove, Pennsylvania is asking, what would be a good on-camera mic for a Sony a7 III camera? I'm planning on shooting basketball and other indoor sports.
Oh, on-camera mics. And I only say that with a big sigh because they've been some of the bane of my existence. They are a tool that is useful in certain circumstances. And having had one on almost every camera I've ever operated since I was 18 years old, sometimes that's the best I can do. I will say that the very first thing I try to do when I'm capturing sound somewhere is not use an on-camera mic, because unless you are close to the person that you are shooting with, or are just there to get ambience that you're going to use as a background for something that you're replacing it with later, the on-camera mic is in kind of a very difficult position. First of all, you're going to get a lot of handling noise, particularly shoulder rubs and things like that, depending on the mounting you can put on it. Shotguns are not like shotguns in the armaments world. They do not reach out and grab things. They just wait for signals to get to them, and then they record them. So even the best shotgun mic at distance is going to sound pretty mediocre. You may be able to hear what's going on, but you probably have to boost that signal a lot to get it useful. In my experience, most of the on-camera mics were about the same. I did see people who are putting more complex and better signal-to-noise ratio mics on their cameras to hope to improve their sounds. I saw a lot of people using short shotguns from Sony and Sennheiser and the other major manufacturers. But I was never sure, listening to a lot of camera footage back, that one was doing a massively better job than the other. That's just me. Let's go to the panel. Jason, what do you think?
So I'm pretty sure that the A7 III will work with the where is it? Yeah, there it is. The XLR K3M, and this would be a little magic shoe that goes into the hot shoe. If the preamp is notoriously bad, you get a better preamp, and then you can put any mic you want on it. Unless Guy's going to contradict me, I'm pretty sure that works with a hot shoe.
Guy Cochran.
I just wanted to say we can be expensive friends. So if you're going to do it, I'm not going to. I'm not going to say it's great for anything besides picking up ambient sound later on to make it feel real. This is the Sanken CMS50. That is a stereo little mini mic that is probably in the $1,000+ range. The other one is this jewel right here. I've owned this, and this is a Shep's Mini CMIT. So it's blue and it's small, and you can get a little shock mount for it and put it on top of the camera. What I've seen other people do in a pinch is to use something like a plug-on transmitter that has Phantom. This one does, and this one records as well. And they've mounted this on top, and then they've been able to just grab that mic and pull it off and then hand it to somebody or move it somewhere else very quickly. So that's an option as well if you want to have a wireless shotgun that you can move off the camera and quickly deploy it so that it can get sounds from one location. But if you're going for stereo, your visuals changing, be aware that you're going to have that left to right issue of unless you make it mono in post.
Those are exceptionally good tools that the guy has just showed. Of course, in my experience, if you're going to put one of those on your camera and get the best sound possible, you can be assured from Murphy's Law that somebody's going to be in the row right in front of you in that audience, and they're going to be talking to their uncle on their cell phone the entire time and be so much closer to that than the audience or anything else you want that's all you're going to hear with your signal back. But Jesse Kester, take us into your thoughts.
And I'm not sure if Sony is still making this exact model. This is the URX and the UTX. This plugs right into the A7, and it's specific to the Sony's hot shoe. But we've been using this, and this is a good way to get the mic off the camera, and comes with a lavalier. So it's useful. It's not the best solution in the world, but it's gotten us across the finish line plenty of times on Sony cameras.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, what I see, if you don't have the budget for the Sennheiser 416 or the CMITs from Sept, I see a lot of guys using these NT3s from Rode, NTG3s. It's a short shotgun condenser. You can put it in a small shock mount, mounted on top of the camera. Of course, you're only going to get what's directly in front of the camera that short shotgun is pointed at. And the problem is with the shotgun, you're also going to pick up everything that's directly behind that person. If you have somebody just on camera talking to the camera, they have to be, only 2 or 3 feet away from you. I wouldn't put anything further away than that to use that as a primary source of audio. And a better solution is to have a sound person there with that shotgun on a boom microphone so that you can put it in from underneath the frame like this. And that way it's pointing up into the air, where you're going to be getting a lot less of that basketball sneakers on surface of basketball court sound going on in the background behind the person that you're trying to interview or get in. Most of these on-camera type microphones are just used for ambience, picking up ambience crowd shots where you want to get the sound of people cheering in the crowd from a remote camera or somewhere. But you probably wouldn't want to use it as your primary source of sound from let's say a commentator that's out in the field. You would give them either a hand mic that they could put very close to them or a lavalier on it. And you could leave the shotgun mic mounted on top of your camera just for ambience on a separate channel, and then the lav into the second channel so that you can mix the two at will and take one or the other, but probably not both.
Alexander.
John, I think you should get the most obscenely long shotgun mic oops, I just cut to the Shure VP89. Look at that.
Is that a lightsaber?
You can use that to ward off scofflaws, too. I will say one thing. If you use a long mic like that, I've had all sorts of difficulties. And Sony a7 III, I think, is a DSLR form factor. Be careful, because something sticking out 5 or 6 or 8 inches in front of that camera is going to be very hard to keep out of a wide-angle shot. I can't tell you the number of times somebody's put something too long on top of a camera like that, and they can't use more than 50% of its zoom range because the mic becomes visible in there. So short sometimes is better with on-camera mics. Next question.
From the QR code, Robert White in Jacksonville, Florida is asking, I always heard that if you choose to use unbalanced cables, they should be under 6 feet. Lately, I've been hearing unbalanced cables should never be used. Has something changed? Is it just the pros pushing for more expensive cables?
Alexander, start us off.
Not at all. So, yeah, there are differing opinions on this. Generally, and I know a lot of people have different opinions on this panel too about this. In general, if you have a choice, if you can, always stick with balanced. Always do that. With unbalanced cables, realistically, you don't want to go more than 25 feet. And I know some people would never want to do that. And I would never want to do that by choice. But you can go with a good quality, properly shielded, unbalanced cable. You can go about 25 feet. I mean, I use 25-foot unbalanced patch cables with my guitar amp. Zero problems at all. So you can, but by choice, no, you shouldn't. Sometimes I get questions from people that have these inexpensive DJ controllers that just have RCA unbalanced outputs, and they want to go into a PA, and I always tell them, just get yourself a stereo DI box, get the shortest possible patch cable possible, and then from the DI box, you got balanced XLR. You can go as long as you want from there. So, always shorter is always better. It's always safer.
Jesse Kester.
I assure you there's absolutely no conspiracy in the audio community to push for more expensive cables needlessly. They translate the data better. They get the information across. A balanced signal will get your information from point A to point B cleaner than an unbalanced signal. And that's all we're looking for, is the cleanest possible transportation of data.
Courtney Gooden.
One thing, typically, where you run into unbalanced audio signals a lot of times in production is with a lavalier microphone. And almost all lavalier microphones, the little skinny cable coming out of that lav is unbalanced because it's just coming out of an FET amplifier in the head of the microphone. And it's an unbalanced signal until it can get into a balancing transformer somewhere. So if you're going to be plugging that signal in, even if you plug it into an XLR cable without a balancing transformer in between, your balanced XLR cable for the long run is going to be unbalanced because it's going to unbalance it when you plug it in. So you got to make sure you run it through something like an adapter, like one of these that is a balancing transformer that's built in. It's designed to interface to those 3.5 or whatever type. They have them with multiple type connectors on them that take those feeds from lavaliers and turn them into a signal that you can plug into a balanced cable. With a built-in balancing transformer there. So you got to make sure that you balance that signal before you pump it into that balanced cable. And if you're hearing buzz, a lot of times it's coming in directly on that short length of cable that is connected to your lavalier microphone. That's where the buzz is getting in on that 3 foot of unbalanced cable on your lav.
Jason.
I guess I'll end by explaining why you want a balanced cable, and I'll leave it to you why you would ever not do this. So the balance, the additional pin, is the same as your signal path, but it is inverted. So think of it like a complete noise cancellation of the positive signal. It's called common mode rejection. And I don't know why you would ever decide, well, I really just don't need that because, I'm only going to use this connection to go from here to here until the end of time. Come on.
Yeah, balanced helps your audio, so try to do it when you can. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia is asking, I have open camera port on ATEM Mini Pro, still trying to solve how recording problems should I Raspberry Pi for... I'm not sure what he's saying there. Or
yeah, I think it was
maybe?
solve House of Worship recording problems, and he wonders if you should add the Raspberry Pi for recording. Ah, there we go. Guy, help us out a little bit. Did you parse through that? And
if he's already got a Mac Mini and already has Mimo Live, because we've heard him talk about it, in Mimo Live, there is this, at the beginning of your template, you can just make an easily recordable document that outputs H.264. So right now you can see output destinations are ProRes or H.264. So depending on how you want to edit this thing in post, you might just want to use a Mac Mini as a recorder if that's what you're trying to do. If I'm understanding the question correctly, you just want to output just somewhere where you can record it. So walk through the entire process with maybe a 2-minute clip or so of cutting A to B and seeing how you want to isolate those sources, and if the computer's fast enough to actually record 2 or 3 or 4 sources so that you can go in and edit this stuff later. Because if you record in H.264, sometimes it's really processor intensive for the poor computer to try and parse those frames. So I would try recording in ProRes if that's indeed what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend recording it on a computer that's doing anything else. And a cheaper route would be to get something like the Blackmagic Video Assist, which gives you a video assist monitor. So you'd have a monitor with scopes on it that monitors, minimal scopes, but scopes and the audio levels. It shows you the audio signal levels. So you have a separate readout of your video. You make sure it's getting the video and it records, and it'll record in H.264 or it'll record in ProRes, MOV files or MXF files. So depending upon how much media you want to attach to it, but probably H.264 would be a good recorder. And that way you have always on-screen indication of recording. You're not tying up another computer, and it doesn't matter. You've got it hooked up to the output of the ATEM, and you just hit the record button. You don't have to worry about, loading software and worry about the hard disk filling up, et cetera. It'll always show you how much time you've got left. So,
next question.
Harold Williams in Portsmouth, Virginia is asking, we want to ensure the safety of all guests at our events. How can we determine if our motion graphics need to be adjusted for guests who are photosensitive?
Jesse Kester, what are your thoughts?
That photosensitivity exists on a spectrum, and there's no one hard line that you can cross, and it will be not good for members of your audience. And then on the other side, it will be good. So just hew very far on the side of safety if this is something that concerns you, and keep your motion graphics simple.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing. And Courtney, you had some thoughts?
Well, to protect yourself legally, a disclaimer at the beginning of the show that says this show contains flashing lights. If you're photosensitive, take precautions. That may save you some lawsuits if you warn the people. But yeah, like Jesse was saying, it's any lawyer can interpret any type of light flashing as a trigger, so you got to be very careful in trying to, and just put a disclaimer in there, because trying to prevent certain frequencies that could trigger epileptic seizures or other sensitivities, it's a legal quagmire.
And congratulations, Harold, because by understanding that there's a potential problem, you're aware of it. That means when you see content that is flashing or doing something that you suspect may trigger that, you'll take additional steps to make sure that if you can mitigate that for your audience, you will. So good job of being aware of it. Next question.
Next question is from the QR code. Florian Baranek in Hanoi, Vietnam asks, I'm experimenting with virtual production using Lightcraft's Jetset. Do you see this as the next step also for home studios?
I have not run across that. I've been sitting in this chair a good little bit and thousands of shows, and so far Lightcraft's Jetset has not come across my individual radar. Now so I'm just unqualified to give you a suggestion as to whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I didn't see this come up before the show. So Florian, I'm going to suggest if it's a serious thing, bring this question back again and early in the process, because all of us who are on the panel try to look through the questions before the show, and if there's something we're not particularly versed in and can't give a good opinion, we go do some research and see if we can figure it out. Alex is very good at that on the show every day. So I'm going to suggest you just bring this in back another time, maybe even tomorrow, and see if you can get it in early enough, or just put it in the queue right now for tomorrow. And then the panel tomorrow will look it over and maybe have some better suggestions for you. Next question.
Robert White from Jacksonville, Florida, from the QR code asks, what is the cheapest, most reliable way to combine a stereo signal into a mono signal, i.e. the headphone jack of a TV?
Jesse Kester, help him out.
I got you covered on the cheap front. What we've got is a 3.5 millimeter stereo female to 3.5 millimeter mono male adapter, which if you're buying one of them costs $3. But what you could also do is buy 100 of them at $1.69 a piece and sell the other 99 and make money off of this deal.
It's a profit opportunity. It's a business model. Courtney, what do you think?
I don't think that would work for you, because that's designed to plug into a mono jack, not a stereo jack, and give you stereo out from that mono jack. I think he's looking to go the other way around.
Did I want the inverse of that one?
Yeah, because you're trying to go from the stereo out on a TV to a mono headphone. And that, as we talked about earlier, you may have to make your own. You could probably find one out there that goes stereo to mono adapter. I'm sure Monoprice or any online on Amazon, I'm sure you can find one, depending upon the size of the plug that you're going to plug into, either 1/4 inch or 3.5 millimeter. Stereo to mono, and it will combine the ring and the tip together in the plug itself. So you can create your own with by cutting off the headset cable and wiring both of the left and right to a single output. The tip and the ring to a single input of your ears. So that's one way to do it. Or buy an adapter, like you said, 1/4 inch to 1/4 inch or 3.5 to 3.5.
Yeah, and hopefully pay a little attention to the sound that comes out of the other end. If you're combining things, you can run into comb filtering and other anomalies when you take simply a 2-channel left and right signal and combine it down to a mono signal. If someone has managed to record it such that there is out-of-phase content on the 2 stereo sides but isolated from each other, and you combine it into mono in the simplest way possible, which is what we're talking about, suddenly you can run into that process where certain sounds are 180 degrees out of phase and cancel each other out there. So it's just something, sometimes it works fine, and if it works fine, it works fine. Sometimes I had a circumstance where I plugged a mono headphone into a stereo. I think it was an old Poco album, and the entire banjo just disappeared. Entirely disappeared. What the heck happened there? And it was pure phase cancellation. All right. We've got some notes here. Mimo Live Lab after the show, as always. That happens at 11 a.m. Pacific. So that's weekly. The Isadora Lab happens right before that at 10 a.m. Pacific. Extra hours. We're now doing shows on Monday. They're fascinating. We're using kind of a different back end. And so if you want to explore that, every Monday that comes up. Next Friday, something pretty special. IBC is about to take off in Europe. That is the big European equipment trade show, the equivalent of NAB, but for the European market. We have a special 1-hour broadcast where some members of our European office hours community are going to be showing you the latest highlights and insights from the show floor. So a lot of excitement coming next week. We always have a ton of fun, and this is a unique opportunity to kind of transport yourself virtually onto the show floor, see what IBC is all about, what's going to be happening over there, and any product announcements. And major companies do product announcements, these things. Last little note, don't forget you can, if you want to help us with our volunteer efforts, do a donation through officehours.global. Donate. We'll be right back.